Hello!
It's us from the future.
We're releasing this previously recorded episode a couple months in advance. We hope you enjoy. We had a lot of fun with this one, and we really enjoyed the book. So be on the lookout for Act Season 2 coming soon.
Woo! Okay. Welcome to our show, All the Good Ones.
Are Taken, aka Ackout.
I'm Alex.
And I'm MK.
And this is our podcast. So we're in March. MK, how's it been going lately?
Well, as of this recording, March is over. But
yes,
it's been good. I like we said in our mini-sode, March is one of my favorite months. So enjoying the weather. But grad school's ramping up. The semester is like coming to a close in May, right? Beginning of May. So, and I have I'll graduate in December, right? So I'm just kind of exhausted. But you know, we started.
You're making it.
Yeah. We started Pure Barre recently. I've been making Alex come with me.
For those listening, I gave such a look to the camera. We went today. Okay.
That might have been a mistake.
And not only did I stay up till 3 a.m. last night reading
IPB.
Okay, so I read the 5th one on Tuesday and I read the 6th one last night. And 10 out of 10. It was really good, by the way. And I remember reading it and I was like, you're going to regret this so bad tomorrow. And at first I woke up and I was like, that was not a mistake. I am so happy I did that. And then it was like after work and I was like, oh my fuck. Oh my fuck. And then it was like, okay, time for Pure Barre. And like usually Pure Barre is like heinous anyway. But then like today it hit me so hard.
It was really hard today, I will say. So I did Pure Barre for 2 years when we were living in Richardson. And then when we moved up here, I didn't go to Richardson anymore. I didn't have a membership or anything. And recently I've been wanting to get back into something. So I found that there's a Pure Barre like 10 minutes from here. Mm-hmm. So I was like, great, we're going to do that. I lost about 20 pounds doing Pure Barre for the wedding. So it like works. And
I'm not surprised.
I have a fun time doing it most of the time. But today reminded me that I am a sleepy little girl. It was not very strong.
It was rough.
I will say she played 3 different Taylor Swift songs, which I did appreciate.
I did notice that. And I was thinking, I was like, I bet MK is going to like appreciate that. But now I'm just exhausted and I have greasy hair and I feel like I have this like haunted look in my eyes and it's because of Pure Barre.
Well, and
I am proud of us though.
Oh yeah.
I am proud of us for going. And you, because you have a membership. I just go occasionally.
And shout out to Amy who's getting a membership soon. So we're going to start going together.
Heck yeah.
But I was telling the girl that we were kind of talking to that I was like, I love Pure Barre days because it means I can wash my hair.
Honestly, any day that I work and I'm like, today's the day.
Yes, exactly.
Because like, it's not an everyday occurrence. Don't you think that? Don't ever think that I'm washing this head of hair every single day. That's crazy. First of all, people should not do that. No, you should not. But for me, it's like an every 3 to 4 day occurrence.
We're lucky if we get like a week for washing hair.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I'm like, it's time to wash my hair. That's good. But I am proud of us for going. I do enjoy it most of the time. Like I feel really good after. I feel strong. It's like rock climbing. Like I'm like, okay, like I feel strength flowing through me.
And you like accomplished something, like.
Yeah, every time I'm in it, I'm like, this is hell. And like, I feel like I'm like preparing for war almost, but like with like dance music in the background. And also when we first went to Pure Barre, I underestimated it. 100% I underestimated it because I was like, oh yeah, it's like ballet kind of, but like exercise.
Also, ballet is hard as shit.
It is hard. And that is not me underestimating ballet. I just thought there was going to be more dance moves involved.
Oh, no.
No. But yeah, yes. Proud of us.
It's fun. It's a good time. I always feel like proud of myself after.
Yeah, my booty looks good. Can't complain. So, yep.
My Apple Watch died, but it's still thinking that I'm doing bar right now. I'm pretty sure because I didn't turn off the and work out.
Oh, okay. I was like, is your body just in a constant state of like.
Honestly, maybe because I am switching meds as we talked about earlier, and it's probably like help.
It's been a time. Yeah. It'll sort itself out though.
Yeah. What have you been up to?
Just work, settling into my now various roles, which has been good. I'm a little stressed, but it's just part of it. And like, I feel good about what I'm doing. So that's all that really matters. And they pay me well. And that's at the end of the day,
what matters.
That's what matters most, honestly. I will never be reading a book until 3 a.m. on a work night again, ever. I mean, I'm going to say never, but that's a lie. I will do that again.
Absolutely.
But not for the foreseeable future. But yeah, work's been good. Family and friends are good.
I knew that was gonna.
Can you stop? You do this every time. He's such a little toot. Oh my God. For those who are listening, the cat just jumped on me and he scares me. Now it's like a stop, baby.
So I don't think we mentioned this in the mini-sode, but Shelby and I adopted a baby. Did we adopt him? No, he just fell into our lap. But it's a kitten. He is 4 months old, I think, which is equivalent to about a 4-year-old child. So he's just a little hood rat.
Every time. He is adorable and I love him. But we play this game now, apparently, and it's not fun for me. But I love you. I do. I really do. Just stop that. So yeah, thriving. It's springtime. The weather's been amazing. And yeah.
Yeah, Beer Fest is coming. Ren Fair is coming.
Oh yeah. The events that Alex lives for are on the horizon. And I am very excited. Those will be my 3rd year going to Beer Fest. Our third year going to Ren Fair together. Mm-hmm. It's so good. It's so good. It's such a good time.
Yeah. And this is our first full episode with the fully completed bookshelves. So
ta-da! Shout out to everyone who helped MK and Shelby.
Yes.
They look amazing.
And I'm really happy. Alex got me for Christmas that little book.
Oh, yeah.
So I got it right next to my Percy Jackson books.
And it is adorable. A hard time putting it together, I will say.
Multiple days.
So keep that in mind if you do decide to purchase one, but worth it. Worth it in the end.
So that brings us to our book of the month.
Woohoo!
Want to take it away, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the Weyward sisters, hand in hand, posters of the sea and land. Thus do go about, thrice to thine, thrice to mine, and thrice again to make up 9. Peace. The charms wound up. Macbeth. Weyward is used in the first folio edition of Macbeth. In later versions, Weyward was replaced by Weird. And this week's book is Weyward by Emilia Hart.
I really like the note that Emilia Hart included with that quote that Weyward was replaced by Weird.
Yeah.
I feel like it sets up the book very well. And just like, I didn't know that. So
it's a very cool little like tidbit because Weyward is it's so fitting. And I feel like Weird is like, I don't know, it doesn't really sum it up, but like wayward.
Right. Weird can mean so many different things, like cool weird, bad weird, nerd weird,
Yeah.
But wayward fits them very well.
Weyward sisters. I love it.
So the one sentence synopsis that we came up with is 3 generations of women are constantly betrayed by men and come to terms with their natural gifts. I didn't try that hard, but ChatGPT said 3 generations of resilient women navigate a world of betrayal by men, ultimately embracing their innate strength and talents.
We love it. We love a woman's story. We love innate nature talents.
not the nature talents.
That's what
but I mean, it is also Women's History Month, which is why we chose
Yes.
this. And as women, you know, it's always encouraging to read a pro-woman novel.
It feels comforting. Like this novel was very comforting.
Yeah. It felt like you were in the cottage.
Yeah, I felt like we were in the cottage, but also like it made me proud to be a woman.
Yeah, and
Made me
have
feel
like
good to be a woman.
lineage, you know?
Yeah, like we can take
What grade are we in? All right.
Let me wipe my tears. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and read the summary for y'all. 2019, under cover of darkness, Kate flees for London for ramshackle Weyward cottage, inherited from a great aunt she barely remembers. With its tumbling ivy and overgrown garden, the cottage is worlds away from the abusive partner who tormented Kate. But soon she suspects that her great aunt had a secret, one that lurks in the bones of the cottage, hidden ever since the witch hunts of the 17th century. 1619. Alpha is awaiting trial for the murder of a local farmer who was stampeded to death by his herd. When Alpha was a girl, her mother taught her their magic, a kind not rooted in spell casting, but in a deep knowledge of the natural world. But unusual women have always been deemed dangerous, and as the evidence of witchcraft is laid out against Alpha, she knows it will take all her powers to maintain her freedom. 1942. As World War II rages, Violet is trapped by her family's grand, crumbling estate. Straitjacketed by a social convention, she longs for the robust education her brother receives and for her mother, long deceased, who is rumored to have gone mad before her death. The only traces Violet has of her are a locket bearing the initial W and the word Weyward scratched into the baseboard of her bedroom. Weaving together the stories of three extraordinary women across 5 centuries, Weyward is an astonishing debut and an enthralling novel of female resilience.
Why did I
Bada bing,
get
bada
chills?
boom. I know, it was so good.
Weyward was published February 2nd, 2023, and is rated a 4.09 stars on Goodreads. It won Best Historical Fiction and Best Debut Novel for Goodreads Choice Awards and was one of the 5 Book of the Year finalists for Book of the Month. A little bit about Emilia Hart. She is a British-Australian writer born in Sydney and studied English literature and law at the University of New South Wales before working as a lawyer in both Sydney and London. We love an educated woman.
Yeah, period.
So let's dive in. Have any thoughts?
Yes, I have many. I love this book.
It was great.
It was wonderful. I really liked how she described, like, so they're described as witches, but like they're not in like the sense that you and I think of stereotypically. Like it's very like rooted in nature and like, I don't know, an inside feeling and womanhood. It feels good.
If anything, it was more of just like a healer with like a little bit of power, like thrumming.
Like a little something extra. Yeah. And I don't know, I just, like we said at the beginning, like I just felt so solidified in like womanhood reading this.
Yeah.
It was just a very comfortable read. Like I loved it.
Yeah, it's very beautiful, honestly, the imagery and stuff. And I'll talk about it a little bit more. But the way that she describes the insect noises and animal, like and plants, like just moving around, like, wow.
It really like plopped you there in the scene. And like, it's so hard to do imagery that well. And I feel like Emilia Hart did such a good job executing that with this book. And I don't know, she did everything so tastefully. That's what I like.
Yeah.
You know, like there was a lot of trauma in this book, as there are in many stories, but like it didn't feel where it was like in your face terrible.
Yeah.
You know, like it was like you still felt for the situation and the characters involved, but it was also like
it wasn't graphic.
It wasn't graphic, which I appreciated most of the time.
Yeah, I did too, because like there is one part where you definitely know it's leading to something bad.
Yeah.
And so I like kind of stopped reading because I didn't want to read the scene.
Same. Yeah.
But when you get to it, it's real. I mean, of course it's awful.
It's still terrible. But
the way that it's described is just like she floats off in her mind. you know?
Yeah, it like you feel terrible, but you're not left feeling disturbed by reading it.
Right,
Like
right.
it doesn't the feeling sticks with you, but it's not like a sick feeling, which I appreciate.
Yeah, for sure. But that being said, make sure to read trigger warnings if you do have them, because there are some triggering themes throughout, just especially abuse towards women. So make sure to read those if any of those things trigger you.
Know your limits, do your research. That's what we always say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I personally love stories based in like witch trial-y times.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of my like very first book ideas. So I always just like have a soft spot. But we went to Salem last year.
Yeah, we did.
And did a little witch tour there. So
which was fun.
this book does take place in London, so it's a little bit before the witchcraft trials of like the US. But I don't know. I feel like you kind of get the same sense with our Salem tour.
Same vibe. I was incredibly scared on that tour.
Really?
But it was so head ass that tour. We were like running around.
I had a great time.
I had a great time. There was like locals telling us like, don't believe anything you hear. Do you remember that?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, it was crazy. But what scared me was like we were like in an alley and he was like talking about the ghost, and then there was like a loud bang and I was like, she's here. But like it was like a dumpster or something.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the restaurant worker like came and like threw out trash, but it was like
the timing was crazy.
Yeah.
I literally like grabbed Jade. I think I was like, oh my God. And then our friend Johnny like disappeared for a moment, came back with ice cream. It was 30 degrees outside. All in all, crazy but fun.
Yeah, and none of the stores were open, so I couldn't buy a witch hat, which I was very disappointed.
We tried to do too much in one day, but it was fun.
I'm glad that we went.
Me too. I feel like the Salem witch trials are like the first piece of history that like you really latch onto when you learn about it in school. You know, like it's kind of like when we're going through like US history, it's like, wow, like, because, you know, a lot of history is frankly monotonous, but then it's like there's some blips of like really cool, fascinating things that happen. And I feel like, to me at least, the witch trials were like the first one where I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that actually happened.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was for me too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting though. Another thing that I love about this book is, one, how well it was written, but each chapter alternated between the three women. So we have Altha, who takes place in the 1619, Violet, who takes place in 1942, and Kate, who takes place in 2019. But what I found the most interesting was that Altha's was in the first person, written like a journal, and Violet and Kate are written in the third person.
I thought it was a good detail.
I really liked it. And so for those of you who don't know what that means, first person means you're writing as the character. So you'll read it saying, I went to the store, I did this, I felt this, I said this. But third person is you're still reading as the character, but it's she did this, she went to the store, she said this. So you definitely pick up on it immediately. Like that's something that you don't just like kind of skim over. But I thought it was really interesting. And we later learn that there's a reason.
Yeah. And I thought it was such a good little detail. I love when authors do something that goes beyond like the story. I mean, it's definitely part of the story, but it's like a stylized writing choice that like adds to the whole thing. And I think it's so clever and so it just makes me more fascinated. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, which is why I think this was such a great debut novel, is because she took care of doing those things.
Yeah, and I think that's another reason why I enjoyed this book so much, is because I could tell how much she put into the story, like how much care and love that she crafted the story with. And like, it's very evident, very evident.
And one thing I did want to start before we dive into the actually two things, but one of my favorite quotes, and I just couldn't find a good place to put it anywhere, is sometimes she had the odd sensation that her whole life was happening at once. And I
feel that way.
Well, I feel that way. I don't know if you've ever watched The Good Place, but essentially they describe time as Jeremy Bearimy. Like that is
What?
It's not a circle. It's just Jeremy Bearimy.
Oh yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Exactly.
Not to me, but like to some people, I guess.
But the point is that it doesn't make sense. Like
Oh,
time
okay. It was just like
doesn't-
random.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
They're saying that time is not linear.
Right.
Okay.
So they're like, look at the actual shape of time, and it like somehow spells out Jeremy Bearimy or something ridiculous.
Oh, okay.
But it is a like dark comedy, so it makes sense.
It's cute that they like did something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate, because I mean, like, we debate time.
Often, Alex tells me it's a construct.
Jeremy Bearimy. But
You're going to come late to something and be like,
Jeremy
Bearimy.
Bearimy. Never have I seen the show in my life. But
You
Jeremy
would love
Bearimy.
it, actually.
I think I would, because it's cute. Like, I've seen,
You
know,
would really-
I like the concept. Yeah, who's to say, you know, as humans are now, like, we can't have a definitive answer. Like,
Right.
time is this, time is linear, or time is circular, or whatever.
Right.
Like, we can guess, sure.
Right.
But other than that.
And I really liked, and she said it a couple times throughout the novel, of like time happening all at once. And it felt very resonant, I guess with me, because of the 3 timelines happening
Mhm.
simultaneously.
Yeah.
You know, so it felt like all of these stories were happening at the same time.
Well, and they mentioned repeatedly, they're like, I feel my past, or I feel like the women come before me,
Yeah.
or like I see these images. Like, time does play a big part in this, for sure. And I think it's interesting that she picked, well, I mean, like, it's not that interesting that she picked the 1600s, because those were the witch trials, you know? But I like the time periods that followed, like the 1940s and then like modern day. I think it just paints it almost is like a sampling of like what women were living with and like kind of society at those times. And like, I appreciate that.
Right. Or at least ones that are most popular for women to be
Yeah.
reading
Yeah.
or, you know about.
Yeah, I agree. But
Because she could have chose like 1870 and like, I don't know.
I don't know what's really going on then. Like, not a lot of good things. I mean, not that there was a lot of good things happening in these times either, but
Yeah. Anyway,
we're not history people.
I do love a history, but
Historical fiction, yeah. Actual dates and things. But I do feel this way. I really like this quote. I feel like, I don't know, it takes me back to the fig tree.
I feel like I should get a fig tree just like tattooed
I
onto my
know.
heart.
I feel like you should, because like, I mean, I don't know, but like, do what you want. But I feel like it's tattooed on my heart, like metaphorically. Like,
I'm
it's
gonna cry.
like- well, I just feel like it's like,
I know.
I don't know, like, we're young. We're like in the midst of our like 20s. Like, life is so tumultuous. Like, it just feels that way sometimes.
And you can't see it in the shot, but there is the bell jar over there in my classic section. So it will be read one day.
Buckle up, baby.
All right, last fun fact. Because it's a small town, the last names take place in all 3 of the time periods.
I like that too.
Which I thought was really cool. And if you look at them, like, there was Dinsdale, who plays a very small character in all of them, but it was cool seeing like Dinsdale in the 1600s as a baker. But in the 1940s, they're a gardener.
Yeah.
And then they're the receptionist at the doctor's office in 2019.
It's like a cute little common thread.
Yeah.
I like it.
And then there was also the Kirkbys. So Kirkby was the young man who helped on the Milbourne farm in 1619, who really thinks Alpha is a witch. And then there's a servant at Orton Hall in Violet's story in 1940 who's named Kirkby. And then there's the bookseller in Kate's story, who is one of Kate's closest friends.
Mm.
So I liked the progression of, like, they start being extremely prejudiced
Mm-hmm.
and throughout time and like
It lessens.
they learn, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I appreciated that. I thought it was a cool little detail.
So 300 hours in. The book starts with a prologue from Altha in 1619 in a prison about to be led to trial. They transport Alpha through the town, and the townspeople's eyes feel like hands on her as she is flooded with shame. She was taken to the town of Lancaster, a few days' travel away. She's never been outside of the village or her cottage, so the smell of so many people and animals in Lancaster assaults all of her senses. In the courthouse, she pleads not guilty to practicing witchcraft, resulting in the death of John Milburn. And she thinks that she's glad Jeanette Weyward isn't alive to see her daughter like this.
Mm.
We meet Kate in 2019 as she decides to flee to Weyward Cottage from her London apartment she is trapped in with her abusive husband. The cottage belonged to her late great aunt, and she packs a small bag of clothes and her only real possession, a bee brooch she's had since she was a girl. Her husband made her throw away all of her. Her asshole of a husband, Simon, threatens her and accuses her of absurd things, calling her a liar for saying she went to the store at 2 when the receipt said 3 or something.
Insane.
And ultimately, all of it ends in physical violence. She would leave just to go to the library, and he was sure she was meeting another man. He even had the groceries delivered to be only healthy foods, so she wouldn't have any reason to leave the house. She thinks perhaps that was why he had really had a problem. Nope. She thinks perhaps that was what he had really had a problem with, that he could control her body but not her mind. He didn't understand why she would want to go to a library.
Yeah.
Or why she had weird thoughts or wanted to be in nature.
Disgusting.
Gross. When she learned that he installed spyware into her phone, she saved up her small allowance, which was only allowed to be used for makeup and lingerie. Gross.
Ew.
For a cell phone.
Ew.
She wasn't sure she would actually have the balls to leave until he announced he wanted a kid, his final move to control her and tie them together forever. She could endure him, but she would never let another human endure it, especially a child. The day she left was the day she got a positive pregnancy test, and she knew she had no other option but to leave. When Kate arrives at the cottage, a dead crow falls from the fireplace. And I didn't understand this at first, but she touches it and it comes back to life.
Yeah.
I was like, what's going on?
What is happening? It is explained later.
Yeah. Essentially, they're healers. So
yeah.
It's an odd crow with white specks on its feathers, and the resurrected crow beats at her window nonstop. She doesn't know if she likes the silence of the cottage once the crow finally stops, because she can finally hear nature again. So as we mentioned earlier, the imagery of the nature and the sounds the insects and animals and plants make is so beautiful. It's just such an unique thing that you don't hear talked about.
Mm-hmm.
The sound of butterfly wings flapping together.
Mm-hmm.
In the silence, she's thrown back into a memory of walking with her dad to school, and she hears a crow, so she goes to watch it. But a car doesn't see her, so her dad pushes her out of the way on the road and dies on impact. Since then, she has pushed the noises away and vows to never listen to them again. She blames herself for his death, and now, in the present day, hundreds of birds surround the cottage and take flight together. Beautiful, but also
PTSD.
Creepy as fuck.
Also very scary. I mean,
would be alarmed.
If I was moving to a cottage and there was hundreds of crows around, I'd be actually, never mind.
And that's what she does. Utterly freaked out by the birds, Kate gets in her car and thinks about where to go. She obviously can't go back, remembering the first time she tried to leave her husband, Simon. And after the second night of being away from him, he tells her that he's taken some pills, so she calls emergency services and gets a taxi back to their apartment. But when she gets there, the bottle of pills is unopened. He tricked her, and he will now never let her leave again. Insane.
Literally insane. It's the worst form of abuse. I don't know about the worst, but it's so terrible because it's so manipulative, and it's so he's basically breaking down every aspect of who she is. He made her quit her job. He made her move into his apartment. he put the spyware on her phone so she can't like have any sort of autonomy or like freedom. And the meanwhile, he's like literally physically abusing her. Like it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's crazy. It's scary.
Yeah, and he monitors what she eats. He makes her wear certain clothes and certain lingerie and always has makeup on and has to dye her hair.
Yeah, she's literally not a person.
No, she's his doll.
Yeah.
Crazy. Instead of going back to London and Simon, she goes to the greengrocer. Although Violet and Kate are heiresses, as like their last name, the cashier seems to think that the heiresses and Weywards are related. Now we move to Violet in 1942. When we meet Violet, it's apparent that she's angry that she's a woman who has to wear dresses and do needlework, while her younger brother gets to study Latin and go to school and have the option to go to war. But Violet's weird and has an odd inclination toward insects. When she was 8 and her brother Graham was 7, they were playing near a beehive and the bees all landed on Violet. Graham wanted to turn, but they all stung him, resulting in a beating from her father and Graham being sent away to boarding school. No one ever came to Orton Hall and she never left. Sometimes Violet wondered whether father wasn't trying to protect her from the village, whether it was in fact the other way around.
I felt bad because like the bee incident obviously wasn't Violet's fault.
Oh.
And like
How was she supposed to know?
she was not supposed to know. She's just having a good time in nature with her, nature abilities and magical powers.
Yeah. And honestly, Violet's story is just tragic.
It made me the most sad, I will say. They're all in different ways terrible and heartbreaking, but Violet specifically is really sad to me.
And it's like, women were so close to being human then, but also so far.
And I think it makes me the most sad because like we see Violet from childhood.
Yeah.
And like there's such a picture of innocence painted there. Mm-hmm. And like later in the story, she's age 16, when things go south. And I don't know, it just makes me sad because literally all she wants is like to be outside and like enjoy nature and like be able to do the things that like her brother can do. And like she's just no one will let her. She's literally locked away in this estate. And it's so sad to me because like it's literally like a cage. Like Alpha's cage, but different.
Well, and that's exactly what I was thinking when I wrote these notes. I was like, they were all trapped somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, Kate was in a luxury apartment, but she couldn't leave.
No. And there was no nature around her. Nothing that connected her to who she was.
And Violet had the lands of Orton Hall, but she didn't have the connectivity of anyone. And I'm sure there were people there who would have accepted her.
Yeah.
Unlike her father. Violet will be turning 18, though, soon enough, and she will be trading this prison in for another one, trading her father's rules for a husband's. Violet wants to travel the world like her father did as a young man, but instead as a scientist studying animals and insects. Her mother is a mystery to her, and she has vague memories and often asks her nanny if she looked like her mom since she doesn't look like her father or brother. She looks like the other Weywards, with dark hair and dark eyes and a red mole. A long time ago, in childhood, she overheard the staff at Orton Hall say that she did look like her mother, and they hoped that Violet wouldn't turn out, quote, odd and uncanny like her mother. Her dad reprimands her for her behavior of climbing trees and just overall, quote, weirdness. Her cousin Frederick is coming to stay with them during his off time from the war, and this is her last chance to be good. Otherwise, she will be sent to finishing school. She resolves to do this because the only person who will allow herself to leave is her. I really loved Violet's like tenacity.
I mean, she's such a strong character.
Yeah.
Like she's such a strong-willed character. The things she faces are so terrible. Yeah. And like I think I appreciated Violet the most because at the end of the day, she stood by like herself. She always trusted herself. She trusted who she was.
Yeah. Back to Altha in 1619. She is imprisoned at the castle in Lancaster, and with a knife she was able to sneak in with her, she makes a wound, which we later find out is her cutting off her red mole.
Mm.
She makes a friend with a spider in her cell, and she's so thankful, like she's crying, because she feels like she's not alone anymore. The next day, a man testifies that she is wicked, and after that, the next to testify is Grace Milburn, the deceased's wife. Her and Grace were best friends growing up, but then Grace's mom got sick, and Grace came to ask Altha and her mom for help. When they get there, it seems she's too far gone, but they try to save her anyway, and it fails. Grace's dad blames the Weywards for her death and forbids Grace from seeing Altha ever again. During Grace's testimony, she describes what happens on the day her husband dies. It's a normal day until the young man who helps on the farm starts screaming, and John is contorting on the ground. When Grace comes to see what happened, his face is gone and his legs are twisted. Altha happened to be walking by and tried to help and is now being accused of witchcraft and murder. Grace doesn't really point to Altha as being the cause of John's death, but the lawyers kind of corner her into talking about the death of her mom, blaming it on the Weywards. In 2019, Kate calls her mom and is assaulted by guilt with every interaction she has with her. She feels like a monster for killing her father and like a bother since her mom moved to Canada with her new husband. She tells her mom that she inherited her great aunt's house, obviously Violet at this point, and to not tell Simon where she is. She sees a picture of her granddad, Graham, and is reminded of him reading her Grimm's fairy tales, which was Violet's favorite growing up.
I love that.
In the attic, she finds a package of items and is curious about the locked drawer. What could Violet have been hiding? She finds the letters between Elizabeth and Rupert, who are Violet's parents, of them planning a wedding behind his parents' back. The letters remind her of Simon when they were first dating, how she tried to convince herself that after their first date, it was romantic that they had sex, even though they were drunk, and she said, wait.
I have nothing to say about that.
She, convinces herself that she didn't say wait.
It's like the gaslighting.
Yeah.
Like, it's like when you've gone through something traumatic like that, it's like a coping response is sometimes to literally gaslight yourself about it. Like, oh, it wasn't that bad, or oh, it didn't really happen that way. Like, maybe I'm misremembering things, or oh, he didn't mean it in that way, but
she thinks of her baby. Will it be a boy, she wonders, and grow up to be like Simon, or a girl and grow up to be like her? She isn't sure what would be worse.
it's so heartbreaking.
That had me dead. I was not okay.
So sad.
And I think this is why I don't know, I kind of lean towards Kate being my favorite.
Yeah.
Because especially as a modern day woman, it's easy for your confidence to
plummet.
And especially after convincing yourself that you killed your dad.
Yeah.
Of course she's just going to take the guy who gives her attention and buys her shit, you know?
Yeah, and I mean the guilt that she carried about her dad for so long, and then along comes Simon, who literally basically whittles her down to nothing. She is no longer a person, and I think she almost believes that she deserves that. Almost a little bit. And so it's just heartbreaking to think that she would compare herself to Simon in this way and think that if she did have a girl, it would be like her, and that could be worse.
Yeah.
Is insane. It makes me very sad.
Chills. There's a lot of really good quotes in this book, I will say.
There are many.
After a doctor's appointment confirming she is pregnant, she finds Violet's birth certificate noting her parents are Rupert Ayres and Elizabeth Weyward, which again confirms that Kate is indeed a Weyward. She knows now somehow that she is carrying a girl and vows to be strong and keep her safe from Simon. Back in 1942, due to her dad's reprimands, Violet continues to hide in her bedroom, forcing herself to stay away from nature. The noises of the insects and animals lessen with every day. She finds the word Weyward scratched into the floorboards. When father leaves to go pick up the cousin, Violet sneaks into his study that no one is allowed to go into to find information on her mom. She finds a handkerchief monogrammed with EW and a black feather spotted with white. And her unnatural hearing of the natural world returns when she holds these items and she thinks, or more like hopes, that maybe her father did love her mother since he kept her items.
No. And it made me sad because like she's had these gifts where she can hear basically all the insects, all the animals around the estate. And she feels very in tune with that and very in tune with nature. And her father basically tells her like, okay, your cousin is coming. So I need you to be on like your best behavior. And is that when she locks herself kind of away for a couple of weeks and is like, okay, well, I'm going to do my best. Like, I don't want to be sent away or whatever he's threatening. And because she does that, because she isolates herself from nature, it's like she loses the connection that is so dear to her and so integral to who she is. It just makes me sad, makes me sick.
Yeah, it's really upsetting.
It is upsetting.
And like, what's wrong with her climbing a tree? Let her climb a tree.
Y'all live in bumfuck nowhere estate. Like, I'm sorry. Who was tromping around the grounds of high society and is like, oh God, a girl in a tree.
And they don't allow anyone to go to.
So what's the deal? You've already cut her off from the world. Let her do her thing. It's so stupid. And it made me so angry that he was like hoarding away her mother's items. Like,
for why?
Like, just let your children. It doesn't make any sense. Like, what? You think that because Violet is going to come in contact with these things, she's going to become suddenly more?
Well, she did.
But perhaps that was a valid fear. But it doesn't matter. She's going to be who she is anyway.
My question is, why did he keep them? Like, he should have thrown them away. He didn't give a fuck about her.
Yeah.
Anyway. So Violet's practically in love with cousin Frederick the moment she sees him, but she's never seen a young man before other than her brother, so she's not sure if this is her response to all young men or just him. Her and Frederick get to talking during the walk with their family, and he gives her some detail about her mother. But Frederick and his family think she was mad and that her dad was bewitched by her, but like not in the cute like...
You bewitched me.
Yeah. Like, she's a witch and bewitched him to fall
in love. Dude. Read those letters where he was basically begging her.
Like, threatening her.
Literally threatening her, like, you will be mine. Like, who was bewitching who? Okay.
Yeah, for real. This, like, lowly peasant who lives in the cottage. Like,
right. Who just thought that a guy, some Viscount, was actually interested in her. That a guy could actually love her. And this is the result that we have. Sick.
Frederick also made it sound as though Graham had already been born, although Violet was always to believe that her mom died giving birth to him. Frederick kisses Violet, and she has no idea how to respond. And as it's described, you're like, I don't think she liked that.
No, she was scared.
Yeah.
She was scared and deeply uncomfortable.
Because at first I was like, all right, cousin, like that's kind of weird, but like love is love, you know? And then later I was like, oh no.
Like you can find someone attractive, but if it feels that way in the moment, there's something wrong. Something is not okay.
Yeah.
Someone is crossing a boundary for sure.
It's like, it's a different time. It's okay. During Altha's trial in 1619, quote, the physician spoke with confidence. He was a man, after all. He had no reason to think he would not be believed. I thought that was very astute of Altha to write.
Yeah, I mean, it's facts.
Yeah.
And this is not just me being a man hater like I usually do, but like, and I stand on that. Not all men, some men. The patriarchy. Most men. Men have some sort of audacity. They really do. For example, Like we live in near a city, right? Kind of like near a central part of a city. And
They know we live in Dallas.
okay, well, fine. We live near Dallas. You'll never find me.
For our 30 listeners.
Who knows? We could blow up and then later they'll be like, oh, she's here. I was talking with Jeremy and Jade, and Jeremy was like, yeah, I like went on a walk to the store the other day. And it's like, it's not that far of a walk, but it's kind of like, it's a bit like probably like an hour walk maybe to the store. So it's kind of a walk. And he was like, yeah, like the sun was shining. I was like out and about. And I was literally thinking, I was like, I could never have the freedom to do that. Like just by myself, walking an hour to the store in the city that we live in. Absolutely not.
I mean, I would do it, but I would be nervous the whole time.
I would not do that.
An hour, I wouldn't walk for an hour for any reason, but.
No, and he went kind of when like it was getting dark outside.
Oh, no.
Yeah, like I mean the sun was out, but it was like it was getting to the point where like he could at some point be walking in the night. And I was literally thinking, I was like, as a woman, like I literally could not do that.
Mm-mm.
I mean, like I'll walk around our apartment and I'll walk like, you know, like I'll take like a day walk, like,
yeah,
you know, normal 10-minute walk. But they just have some sort of audacity that like they can just flit about and do whatever the fuck they want. And it's just, we don't have that.
Mm-mm. Well, a good example right here. So the physician says that Alpha and her mother were nuisances, always interfering with the physician's remedies, which was usually them saying, don't freaking leech patients. But he did say that she has a witch's mark, aka the mole, which is what she cut off that first night in jail. And they take off her clothes in the courtroom. What?
It's so symbolic of like, I mean, not only are they like literally stripping her down to like nakedness, which is already like so taboo in that time, you know, especially for a woman to be seen like that in public. But it's like at that point, they're literally taking her down, like her personhood. Like it's literally like, it's more
stripped
than just, it's literally like they're trying to take her, again, her autonomy away. It's just, it's so, and at that point, she's at the mercy of everyone. And I think she even makes a note. It's like some people were looking at her in disgust, but she could also tell some men were looking at her like lustfully. And
gross.
It's so, she's literally on trial for witchcraft.
And again, with Violet too, the doctor was very too close.
Too much.
But they can't find the witch's mark because, of course, she cut it off. And the physician just says that the lighting was dim at the jail. And that was his explanation. Like, it's fine.
And they're like, okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
Like, no second questioning, no verification.
She's on trial to be hung because she was near where someone died.
Right. And again, simply because he's a man and in the position that he's in, they are going to take his word for it. No matter what.
And thankfully he isn't just totally like, yeah, no, for sure she's a witch. You know?
At least he's a little bit impartial, but still, it's ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous.
Yeah. And the next to testify is the young lad who was helping them, who helped at the Milburn farm. And he takes a stand. So he says the cows stampeded John and then stopped, quote, like a spell had been broken, and like makes eyes at her like daggers. And he said he had a funny feeling about the day as if there were eyes upon him.
Just say you don't have bitches.
He's 17. Like he.
That was a comment. We can take that out.
That's our next pen idea.
Just say that you're a lowly, uneducated farmhand.
Because he's just a boy in a small
He's
town.
just a
Like,
boy, like, and they're so uneducated at this point and so like going with the flow of whatever the village is gonna say, you
like
know?
he's probably just spouting whatever his dad said, you know?
And I understand the fear of not understanding something. Like, I understand that, but like this takes it to a whole new level. Like, he basically saw that she was nearby and therefore she caused an entire herd of cows to do that, which
Even though she was the one who was like, yo, boy, go get the doctor. Like,
yeah, which, and that didn't make sense to me either. Cause I was like, at first, later we find out other things, but at first I was like, why would she continue to hang around if she really was the person at fault here?
mm. And that takes us to part 2. Back in 2019, Kate finds a few stamps and receipts from Kirkby's books and games and decides to go see if it's still in town. She talks to Emily, who is the owner of the bookshop and friend of Violet's. She's nice and offers her information on her great aunt, and Kate wants to ask her for a job, but talks herself out of it because she hasn't had a job since the first time she tried to leave Simon when he made her quit the job she loved.
The job that she dearly loved, that was integral to her happiness.
As a child illustrator or publisher or something.
Yepper. Yep.
She walks through the cemetery and sees her grandfather and great aunt's headstones next to each other. Surely, she thinks, if Violet was a witch, like some of the people in this town think, Violet wouldn't be laid to rest here in the cemetery. The only thing besides her name and birth and death dates and the tombstone is a W that matches the W of a necklace she found in Violet's cottage, likely for Weyward. She confirms at the doctor that she is having a girl, and she calls her mom to let her know and is shocked that her mom knew about Simon's abuse. She later makes her way to Orton Hall and finds a small old man living in Violet's father's old study. He's clearly traumatized and forces her to leave when he sees her bee brooch given to her by her Aunt Violet. The house is covered in dead insects, and there seems to have been a swarm. The mayflies all died in August when Violet died.
Interesting.
So Kate is running out of money, and she tends to Violet's overgrown garden as a way to sustain herself. The next day, she goes to look at records in Lancaster, and they find a record for Elizabeth Weyward, who married Rupert Ayers and died in 1927. The cause of death is vague, but points to death during childbirth. However, he did note that it was weird that it didn't specifically say that she died during childbirth.
Extremely sketchy.
Eleanor Weyward died in 1938, which is so sad. 4 years.
I know.
At 63 due to liver cancer. And Altha Weyward, at age 21, was indicted for witchcraft in 1619, but it didn't say that she was hung or where she was buried, just that she was indicted. Which just means that, like, she was put on trial, but it didn't say whether she was found guilty or not. She feels more confident than she's ever been after trying to reconnect with her family, and Kate chops off all of her bleached hair that Simon forced her to dye and marches to the bookstore and asks Emily for a job at the bookstore.
She's healing.
Months pass, and her and Emily, the bookstore owner, become friends. She burns the clothes that Simon made her wear that were too tight and too revealing, deciding to wear her great aunt's eclectic wardrobe of green dresses and capes. In December, someone drops off a box of things labeled Orton Hall.
Dun, dun, dun.
In 1942, Violet realized that Frederick's smell was actually brandy. She hadn't thought love, if that's what this was, felt so close to fear.
It fills me with such a rage. Like, it's crazy. Just like a quiet rage. Like, it's just so unfortunate. Like, they didn't tell women anything back in the day. Like, they had no knowledge of like what was normal in relationships with men, and they had no idea like what was okay and what was not okay. They didn't really even understand their own anatomy, which is
And
a whole nother thing.
she didn't have a mom she could ask either.
She did not have a mom that she could ask either. So she's having this little crush on her cousin, which is weird. I guess more
Different time.
acceptable back in the day. But it's like her first experience with like a human boy other than her brother and her father.
Yeah.
And it is just so disappointing that he turns out to be the person that he is, because do they even say like how old he is in this?
I assumed like 21.
Yeah, around there.
He was an adult. Like,
yeah, he was grown.
He might have even been like 26. And she was 16.
Yeah, I mean, he was grown. He had been to war and back. Like, he had served time, and
he was just on break. Like, he was going back.
And it's gross because, well, it's all gross. It's all disgusting, but it's even more disgusting because he even comments on like how innocent she is.
Mm-hmm.
How like a child she is. He specifically says that. He's like, oh, how like a child you are. Disgusting, pedophilic. And he's taking advantage of the lack of knowledge that she has, the innocence that she has, because she has been locked away and because she's a woman in the society where it's so taboo to talk about anything like this. But he, as a man, has been out in the world, has been to war, I'm sure has had like sexual experience, has sexual knowledge of himself and like
obviously
how that relates to others. And then that's perfectly acceptable. And it's sick because then you create situations like this in society where there's one group of people who has a huge advantage over another group of people, a very vulnerable group of people. And he pounces on that.
Yeah. And is rewarded for it.
Is praised for it. That's a whole nother thing.
So Frederick was hungover, and father was definitely showing him favoritism over his two kids. Graham's jealous, and after lunch, they went out to play ball, and she caught Frederick sneaking drinks from his flask. He kept giving Violet hungry stares, and he gives her a few slugs of the brandy too. She was then bit by a midge, which I'm assuming to mean mosquito.
Yeah, it's like, you know, those like clouds of tiny bugs that you see.
Oh, I didn't know you could get bit by those.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's what that is.
Okay. But she's never been bitten by anything before. So the fact that something bit her is just one foreshadowing what's about to happen. And also the insects being like, stop it. Like,
yeah, it's like a warning. Like, it's like they know he has ill intentions.
And they're trying to stop it from happening, alas. Frederick leads her away into the forest and continues to give her alcohol. He her, says he hopes she enjoyed herself, and then leaves to go back to London. Moment of silence, man. And this is what we were talking about at the beginning of, like, while it is described, it isn't overtly grotesque and graphic, I mean.
Yeah. Which I'm thankful for.
Yeah.
It was graphic in another way. It was graphic in the way that Violet was trying to cope with it all.
Like,
literally take herself out of her body and like basically focus on the surrounding area. And it sucks because she's in the woods that she loves. She's like in the trees. Like, she's even saying like to herself that like, although that alcohol is making her feel funny, she feels good. Like, she's in the sun, she's laying here, like she's enjoying herself. She's in nature where she thrives. And then it turns so sour, and that becomes like a tainted memory.
Yeah.
In a place that she no longer feels safe.
She simply doesn't acknowledge the fact that she's likely pregnant, mainly because she doesn't know that she could be. I mean, she's smart enough and has read her brother's biology books enough to know that maybe, potentially, probably something is growing in her stomach, but she kids herself into believing that it's not happening. And she feels foreign in her own body, of course, after something like that. and she never leaves the bed. She decides to kill herself, writing a note explaining what happened, and to ask them to bury her under her favorite tree. But Graham bursts in looking for his textbook, and, she's just like, "Oh, I was just looking out the window. Haha."
So sad.
Um, the next morning, she's sick, and the nanny calls for the doctor. When the doctor arrives, they realize she missed her period, and then he puts his finger in her. For what?
Yep. Yepper. It's because he's like, and this is so crazy that this stuff probably went on back in the day. Like, it's so invasive and so unnecessary and so bad. But um the nanny is like sitting on her bed with her, and the doctor comes in, and the doctor asks the nanny, like, well, is she intact? And Violet's sitting there like, well, what the hell does that mean? Like, I'm a whole person. Like, of course I'd be intact. Like, I have my limbs, basically. And the nanny is like, the last I knew, yes, like, she is intact, meaning like she has her hymen, she's like a virgin. And like, so the doctor literally shoves his fingers inside of her invasively and is like, no, she's not. It's so sick. And at this point, she's already been so traumatized and so invaded by like men. And so, like, it made me so sad, the scene where she's like writing her suicide letter, because she's basically saying, like, because at this point she feels disgusted by herself. Like, she feels like she can't even live in her skin. She feels like she's been so tainted beyond repair. And as she's writing the note, she's thinking to herself, like, well, at least my body will return to the earth. Like, at least I will fade into oblivion.
Yeah. It's really sad.
Very sad.
So they realize that she missed her period, and it's apparent she's pregnant, but no one explains to her that she's pregnant. They don't say the word pregnant, and just in general don't explain at all what's happening. They told everyone that she has nerves like her mother and are sending her to a sanitarium. Her father writes to Frederick to ask him to marry her, which Violet doesn't obviously say anything, but vehemently disagrees with. And of course, they all blame her and her sins for her being pregnant, even though he obviously took advantage of her. And the dad was pleased when he learned of them having alone time together.
It's just gross.
It really is.
It's just so disgusting.
Altha says in her journals in 1619, "We never thought of ourselves as witches, my mother and I. For this was a word invented by men, a word that brings power to those who speak it, not those it describes. A word that builds gallows and pyres, turns breathing women into corpses."
I love this quote.
I do.
It's probably like one of my favorites. It's so true, because like, it's a man inventing a word to describe something they don't understand and that they fear, so therefore that they want to get rid of.
Yeah. Her mother told her that man was actually made from woman, not the other way around like they were taught in church. She asked her mother why the reverend would lie, and her mom says people lie when they're scared. She asks what they're afraid of, and her mom responds, women. Altha now thinks that they should have been scared of men the whole time, which is horrifying.
Yep.
Altha attends church every Sunday, just like her and her mother did. Reverend Good is brought to the stand, and the Reverend seems hesitant to blame Altha, but he was the one to write that there was supposed witchcraft around Milburn's death. And the person who asked him to do that was William Metcalf, Grace's dad, who blamed the Weywards for for his wife's death. Gross.
Yep.
Altha says when she thinks of marriage, she never really considered it, but if she were to love or marry anyone, it would have been Grace. And it makes her sad how alone they both are now since Altha's mother's death. Her mom named her Altha because it means healer, like they are. She knew her responsibility to the town was to keep them healthy and never use too much of her power so no one knows too much about them. When she wakes up the day after the testimonials, she is sure she's going to be hung. So I'm going to read what the judges say. Or do you want to?
Sure.
Okay.
So this is what the judge says. The accused, Alpha Weyward, has been charged with murdering Master John Milburn by witchcraft. The alleged crime took place on 1st of January in the year of our Lord, 1619. Witchcraft is a grave scourge on this land and our king. His Royal Highness King James has charged us with fighting against its insidious evil. We must be wary of it in all aspects of our lives. The devil has long fingers and a loud voice, which reaches us all with sweet entreaties. As we know, our women folk in particular are at great risk from the devil's temptation. Being weak in both mind and spirit, we must protect them from this evil influence. And where we find it has already taken root, tear it from the earth. We have heard the evidence against the accused. It has been established that Master Milburn was trampled to death by his cows. Neither witness to John Milburn's death has given evidence to suggest that the accused uttered any incantation to compel the animals to behave in this manner. Indeed, Daniel Kirkby described how a crow tormented the animals and drove them into a frenzy. We know that crows are common in this part of the land and that they can be violent with their interactions with other animals and humans alike. The accused was not brought to touch the corpse, and thus we cannot know if it would have bled at her touch. The court, aided by the good Dr. Smithson, has examined the accused body for a witch's mark. None was found. Having heard this evidence, I ask the gentlemen of the jury to deliver their verdict, bearing in mind their duty to God and their consciences. Roll my fucking eyes. Like, it's so...
Of the charge of murder by witchcraft, he said, we find the accused not guilty.
Oh God, like, it's so, it gives me like hives to think that like people were going around viewing women like this at some point in time. Like, it's crazy. Weak in both mind and body. Let's be fucking real, okay? You are here because of a woman. A woman grew you in her belly. All right. So to say weak in both mind and body is insane. Is insane.
Insane.
Oh, God.
When the verdict is delivered, Grace looks at her for the first time since the day her husband died. Altho's released, and one of the jurors finds her and says that his wife was saved by a woman who was hanged for witchcraft, and he said nothing. He gives her a pouch of gold coins and vanishes. The village pillaged her cottage, and it takes her 3 days to clean it up. After, she sits down to write the story of what happened, so there is evidence of it, not just village gossip. The hardest part to write comes next, even though it is technically the first that happened. Grace came to her cottage in the middle of the night a year ago in fear. Part 3. In 2019, the books that were dropped off at the bookstore were Violet's books she left in Orton Hall, and Kate finds Violet's suicide note from her failed attempt. She then looks up Frederick and realizes he's the old man at Orton Hall still. She thinks in horror of how Violet's father gave his seat of Viscount to the person who raped his daughter. Unfathomable.
Yeah, like he's such a crazy character. He fought so hard for Violet's mother just to take advantage of her and then lock her away. And
he wanted someone else to do his dirty work.
And then to treat her children that way. It's like, why even go through all of that in the first place? Like, seriously, like, just live your crusty old Viscount days alone. Like, seriously. Like, it's so stupid.
Kate goes to visit Frederick at the old person's home that he's now living in, and he freaks out. It pretty much just confirms her theory that Violet somehow caused the infestation in Orton Hall to happen. She wrecks her car on the way home and has to walk home through the woods, which she's afraid of due to her father's accident, and it's deathly cold. During her walk through the woods, a crow calls to her, and she knows that that's the right direction. She realizes that her father's death was an accident, and it wasn't her fault. She wasn't the monster. She's relieved to learn that her baby is okay after the car wreck, and her mom will be there soon to prep for the baby. But Simon calls saying, I found you. No.
Knew it was coming. Knew it was coming. Very disappointed when it did come. Basically, she was like prepping for the baby and she had ordered something online for the baby.
Stroller, I think.
Yeah, stroller. And she had put her email address, which is attached to her old cell phone that Simon had control over. So although she deleted it within like
3 minutes.
Yeah, a couple minutes, there was still the chance that like because he had her old phone that he could have seen the email and like put two and two together and not only understand that she was having his child, but also that her address. Yeah.
Because it was shipping.
Yep.
After she hangs up, he texts her, I'll see you soon. Very soon. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't have a car. So she packs a small bag and hides in the attic. Simon arrives saying he just wants to talk. And finally makes his way in through the back door.
Mm-mm.
In 1619, Grace comes to the cottage after 7 years of her and Altha not talking. Grace asks for something that will make her pregnancy go away, which confuses Altha, since Grace has always talked about wanting kids growing up. Grace gives Altha 1 week to get something for her, and if she doesn't, her husband will likely kill her. There is an armoire where her mom kept her recipes and notes locked away with the key tied around her neck. She found the recipe, but struggled with what the right thing to do was, and ultimately decided that saving Grace was the right decision. Grace takes the tansy tincture that induces an abortion, and her husband walks in on her disposing of the body. He beat her, and she ran to Altha's, explaining that she had miscarried twice and beat her within an inch of her life both times. She was afraid that if it happened again, he would kill her. Grace stayed with Altha, but when she woke, Grace was nowhere to be found. Altha worries after Grace, but can't confront her in public. She sees a vision of her with bloody thighs, and she fears something bad is going to happen to her. She sees her at the market and follows her, asking after her, and once again brings up the idea of killing her husband. And Grace says to drop it and to never talk to her again. Violet is now living in this cottage that she's realizing belonged to her mother and her mother's mother. She cleans the cottage and the garden. She finds letters and learns that her father had married her mother so that she would use her powers to kill his family, his parents and older brother, so that he could inherit Orton Hall and become the Viscount. He then had the doctor kill her because she was the only one who knew.
Yeah, so basically there's a lot to unpack there. Almost too much. Like he's ridiculous.
Insane.
So he's pursuing Violet's mother, Elizabeth, and is basically like, I want to get married to you.
And like a very aggressive
in
fashion.
A very aggressive fashion. Very too much. Too much. And when she finally agrees, he's basically telling her like, okay, well, my family's never going to accept you. Like if we have a child together, which I think at that point she was pregnant. If we have a child together, they're basically going to like try to take it from you. It will never be recognized as ours, like that type of thing. So for the sake of our family, you have to take care of my parents. Like you need to do something in order to protect our family. And so Elizabeth takes that upon herself and is like, okay, well, if I'm going to have this baby, like I need to do whatever I can to protect it. And she kills, with the help of her crow and like her powers, kills Rupert's family. And as she's like looking at the wreckage, she is basically thinking like, Rupert could have easily lied to me this whole time. Like, I've never met these people. How do I know?
They're bad.
Yeah, like how would I know what their intentions are? So she has to live with that going forward. And then she has Violet, she has Graham. And at this point, the Viscount is like, okay, well, don't really need you anymore. You're crazy and weird and you're not giving me what I want. And you also know that I kind of like egged you on to do this crime. So I'm going to take you out. And he does.
Through the doctor.
Through the doctor, which the doctor's an evil ass man.
Which it's just like crazy that they're like, oh, it's your like ovaries that are making you like super hormonal. So like
it's the hysteria. Like that's why they call it a hysterectomy. You know all that, right?
I actually didn't know that. That's insane.
Yeah. It's like hystria or something like that is Greek for like womb. Yeah. You didn't know that? Let me fact check, but yeah, I'm like
holy shit.
Yeah, that's why they call it a hysterectomy, because it's like womb. It's
like they're insane.
And hysteria.
Yeah.
That's like the whole thing. That's why they call it hysteria, because it started in like they thought that like women's mental illness started with like the sexual organs.
I wish it did, because that would be a lot easier to fix than my brain.
For real. Yeah, okay. The name hysteria is derived from the Greek word hystera, which means uterus.
I'm upset.
I can't believe you didn't know that. I thought you would have known that.
No, let us know. Did you know this?
Because yeah, I knew it. Oh yeah,
shook.
y'all let us know. Yeah. Y'all let us know. I thought this was like you grew up to be a woman and you became unhappy with the world, and this is just knowledge that you had. Because that was my experience.
I was like, yes, I am hysterical. Let me look up the origin of the word.
It gets even fucking crazier. So listen to this. Cahun papyrus, dating from about 1900 BC, is attributed to starvation or displacement of the uterus. This theory is repeated by Hippocrates, Plato, Celsius, Arrhetius, and Serenus.
They just removed the womb?
Yeah.
Because people were being a little upset?
Yeah. We are not historians, but I did know that.
Do your own research. We're only here to read books.
Yeah, for real.
So while Violet's cleaning, she finds Altha's diary. And she also finds letters between her mother and her grandmother. And I didn't put them in detail in here, but there was one that was just like, I should have listened to you this entire time. Like, he's not a good person. And it's just so heartbreaking because they're not far from each other.
No, she's literally up the road, basically.
Yeah. But like, anytime she tries to approach the house,
she's turned away.
Yeah. The Viscount comes and is like, you will be murdered if you like continue to do this.
She's another man in power.
And then if
abusing it.
And she can't leave, she's locked in her room, like this just little room. That's why she carves Weyward into it, hoping, praying that her daughter will one day find it
and know, or start to wonder, like, what is this?
What is this? Oh, chills. After finishing reading Altha's diary, she takes the tonic that Altha centuries ago made for Grace. Like Grace, she didn't realize the pain she would be in. She's glad she refuses to think of it as a baby, is out of her. And but she thinks what her mother wrote in the letter, quote, I began to dream of her grown into a dark-haired beauty, but alone and bleeding in our cottage.
Mm.
This is what essentially caused her mother to die. But it was also, she had this vision of her daughter going through exactly what she did. And her mom thought, I can make this go away if I marry the Viscount because he has money and he loves me and whatever. Which ultimately ends in her death. And it's just devastating that she tried to like rewrite the vision. She tried to rewrite the history, and still the vision her mother saw happened to Violet anyway. And Violet's now reading that everything that her mother went through didn't stop the tragedies that happened to Violet.
Yep.
In 2019, Simon arrives the second Kate hides herself in the attic. She doesn't have any cell phone signal, so she can't call the police or send a text. She wishes she had a weapon to defend herself. And she can hear that he settled on the couch downstairs waiting for her to return back home. She finds the necklace she wears is a locket, the one that that was violets that she found on the nightstand. And it matches the armoire. So she opens the locked drawer with the key she finds inside and starts reading Altha's words, which is why we now know why the Altha's chapters are in first person. It was actually the journal that both Violet and Kate read. She finishes reading Altha's diary, and she now knows the truth about her and her family. She hears the rain turn into birds, and she knows that the birds are here for her to help, not to harm like she thought they did with her father's accident. She knows it is now or never and opens the trapdoor. Birds are pecking at the windows, so Simon doesn't hear her approach, but when she calls his name, he is on her fast, suffocating her, strangling her. She realizes now that the fear she's always felt was actually power just underneath the surface, and she lets it go. Birds, insects, everything crashes through, and it starts attacking Simon. After moments of letting this carry on, finally she lifts her hand and they stop. Simon is in a ball in the fetal position on the floor, and one of his eyes is pecked out. She tells him to leave, and he does. The insects and birds leave, and then the police and her friend Emily arrive.
It's a lot.
It is. I really liked the way that this was written, though. Like that section. It was very...
Yeah.
You felt the power.
Yeah. And I feel like it showed the culmination of all of their journeys, like resulting in Kate in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
In
1619, Altha's mother explains to Altha that they have nature inside of them. They use their healing gifts as a way to live because people appreciate it, but the relation they have with insects and animals cannot be used, for they will be found out. She says she must lay with a man to get his seed, but after that take nothing from him, not his name nor his love, because he might find out and hang her. Grace was not at church on Christmas Day, so Altha watched the Milburn farm for days looking for signs of Grace. Finally, on the 6th day, she saw her fall into the snow, retching, and John picks her up by the hair and ushers her into the farm. The butcher's son brings by a gift, and also a gift from Grace. And when she opens it, she realizes it's a way for Grace to tell Altha that she's pregnant again. She dreams of her mother telling her not to tell anyone of her gifts, but she knows she must. She talks about having the crow fly to spook the cows and trample John. When she sees Grace run out, she goes to meet her, covering up John and telling the boy to get the doctor. Grace and Altha sit there holding hands, and she sees the bruises on Grace's wrist. She hasn't seen Grace since, and she hopes that she is faring well. After she is acquitted, the butcher's son brings her meat, and she asks for his seed, not his name nor his love. The whole time she thinks of Grace, and she decides that she will not flee the village because this is her home too. Quote, "They do not frighten me. After all, I am a wayward and wild inside." Mm-hmm.
Grace did not deserve Altha as a friend.
No, she didn't. Altha would have literally done anything for her.
Literally would have done anything for her. And stood by her constantly. And like Grace, and I understand it was a little bit, not a little bit, but I understand it was because of her trauma. But still, like,
now that her husband is dead, why can't she just like be like, "Hey, Altha, thanks."
Right. Like, hey, like maybe we should talk about everything that's happened. Like, I appreciate you as a person. Maybe we can try to have a friendship or a little bit more now. Like something.
Don't feel like Grace was into that.
I don't think she was, no, but something substantial.
Yeah.
Because Altha deserves so much more.
She did. In 1942, Violet hears Graham calling for her through the rain. When he went looking for his biology book, he found the suicide note she had left for them poking out of the Brothers Grimm. He knew that she would not want to marry Frederick after reading that note and overheard Father on the phone with the doctor So he came to find her. He buries the remains of the baby and gets her to clean herself up, since the doctor and her father are on the way. The doctor inspects her, which
Again.
it really bothers me too. It's like when they were inspecting her, like the father and brother turned their backs. Like, you're already just like doing whatever you want with her body. Don't pretend.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost ironic, like, because at this point, Violet's father was like, I own you. You're going to say what I do. I'm going to protect you, or rather, I'm going to keep everyone away from you. And basically, you're going to do my bidding, and therefore I own you and your body. But then when it comes down to the nitty gritty of like her health and her womanhood and her anatomy, it's like, oh no, like I can't own up to facing what my actions have done to you.
The doctor inspects her and asks her story. She explains that the cramps turned into pain, and Graham says he was there and saw it all happen. The doctor asks if she did anything to bring this upon herself, which is, a sin and can't do that. She says no. Her father asks if the doctor can be sure that she did nothing to bring this upon herself. Are you kidding me?
Why does it even matter? Why does it even matter at this point? Again, it's just the three of y'all. At this point, you already understand that she was impregnated by her cousin who is an adult and she's a 16-year-old girl. Whatever, sin. Okay, so you already understand that. Why would it even matter if she took it upon herself to like rid of the child? To me, if he really views that things that way, where it's like, oh my God, the sin, and like you're such a just despicable daughter, like shouldn't he be glad that it's gone, it's taken care of now?
I don't know what the hell he's going on about.
It's almost like he wants like a final thing to like pin to her, like this is the final straw of like that I can prove that you are like this damaged, weird being, and like, finally like more evidence of it.
Well, I think also if she were to marry Frederick, he would they would still have tabs on her.
Yeah.
And now the wedding's obviously called off. There's no baby. So he doesn't have anyone to be like, what's she up to? Like, is she being weird? Is she like making our family disgrace?
Let her live in the damn cottage. Like, I don't. There's no one around. Like,
there really isn't.
No one around. It doesn't matter.
The only people are the servants in Orton Hall.
And they obviously are going to know whatever goes on in the doctor. Like, that's it. Like, I just don't. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
And the doctor says, no, we can't be sure that she, did this to herself. We just have their word. And it's left at that. They let Graham stay for a week to help her rest up, and Violet tells him what actually happened with their mother. When their dad and the doctor return to make sure that Violet's fine, their dad says she's being shipped off to Scotland, and she says no, she's staying right here. And when he fights her on it, she brings a small swarm of bees to bother him and says, I am my mother's daughter after all. And Graham stays with her.
Which I'm very glad about. It just solidified. Like, she needed somebody.
Yeah. And
anybody.
He did keep his word of once he became a rich lawyer.
To help her.
To help her get her education and weird bugs.
Which I loved, because I think he really did love her. And it just, she needed some, like, he's a brother, but he was also her friend, like she needed a good person in her life.
She needed anyone in her life.
Literally one single person to be like, I see you as a human being. You are a person to me, and I accept and I love you. And she didn't get that from literally anybody except for Graham. Oh,
So Graham was disowned from the family, and Frederick took the title of Viscount once their father passed. Frederick wrote to Violet giving her the deed to Weyward Cottage, which infuriated Violet since it wasn't his to give away. Graham decided to go into law and was smart enough to get scholarships, so he didn't need to use Frederick's money, though he did offer. Even though technically that money should have been Graham's anyway.
Yep.
Graham doesn't seem mad or resentful that it should be his. He's just glad to be with his sister. During the winter, Violet sees the mayfly eggs in the river and she gets a fun little idea. She climbs the tree and feels the power take over her. Frederick will never forget what he did to her. Ultimately, she just in 1942, makes sure that mansion has a bunch of mayflies in it constantly.
Yeah, it was disgusting. Like when Kate was describing it, when she went to visit, like in 2019, basically like every surface was dusted with like carcasses of bugs. And like she saw at first what she thought was like glitter, but it was literally like wings of damselflies. Like,
Yeah.
disgusting.
Gross.
And just imagine the sound.
Ugh. And they're so big.
They're so big. Imagine the sound of like all those insects in your home.
And they're alive until Violet died.
Until Violet died, just swarming you. Insanity.
I thought that was a very good,
deserved.
yeah, like a good punishment for him.
100%.
Because he won't ever forget, and it also drove him crazy.
Yeah, he was living like an animal. He acted like an animal, therefore he's going to live like an animal.
Hidden inside an office because he couldn't, like...
In his own mess, his own disgusting mess, yeah.
And it smelled like piss and shit, and there was just like one little corner that he slept in and...
Never left.
Horrible.
And he went insane. Good.
Graham brings back bug and plant books from the library for her when, in between breaks at school for her to keep, and tells her once he's a rich lawyer, he will pay for her to go to school and learn things about bugs. She sees the crow in the tree with the white specks and knows that everything will be okay. Lastly, in 2019, the police arrest Simon in London and there will be a hearing. He will likely only be in jail for 2 years, less with good behavior. But she's not afraid. She knows he can't hurt her anymore. She writes her victim statement, but she thinks she is not a victim, but a survivor.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I read that, I get chills.
Mm-hmm.
Her mom comes and they get ready for the baby. She has the baby on the floor of Violet's kitchen and names her Violet Altha.
Amazing.
Very sweet. In the epilogue, it is Violet in 2018, and she's reminiscing in her past at Graham's funeral that Kate was special. She was talking to the bees in Weyward Cottage. She always thought the Weyward line would end with her, and she tears up learning that they will continue. She wakes up in the middle of the night to see a man in a car intent on hurting Kate. She rushes to find them. I think it's like 3 a.m., something crazy. She has to drive an hour to go find them and whatever. She rushes to find them and realizes that they're probably on their way to school, and she sends her bird to get Kate off the road. Like have it caw so Kate will notice it and walk towards it. Then her father pushes her out of the way and he dies instead. Quote, "He was a good man, not like Violet's own father. Even if Violet hadn't been there, he would have done anything to defend his child. He would have kept her away from the cruel-faced man. But Violet had never imagined such a possibility that a father could be capable of such love. He had loved his daughter, and maybe he'd understood what Violet did." Years later, Violet went to go see her great niece, Kate, in London. And pulled up to a brick apartment building, realizing that something was wrong. There was no nature anywhere nearby. When she went to the door and asked for Kate, a man who was familiar said that there is no Kate there, but she knew he was lying. On her way home, she realized why he was familiar. It was the man from her dream many years ago. She realized that she had seen 2 different incidences, and she was just like her mom. She thought she could save her great niece. She'd been wrong. She hadn't saved Kate from anything. Violet wanted to make amends, so she left Weyward Cottage to her great niece, hoping to give her a new life away from him.
Mhm.
The end.
Wow.
I actually do have chills.
I know. It's so I love that Violet, because at first I was like, at the beginning I was kind of upset with Violet. Like I was like, where have you been this whole time?
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, to be fair, Kate was dealing with her own shit at the time. Like she had cut everyone off via Simon, like because of him. And I was upset because I was like, why is Violet not trying to assist Kate more? Why is she not trying to teach her about all of this stuff? Like, Kate needs family. Like, where is Violet? And but later we do see that she did try. She did try. She did try. She was there at some integral moments in Kate's life. And it makes me sad that it didn't work out. And I feel like it's just because those things had to happen.
Yeah. Well, and you also see both Kate and Violet blamed themselves for Kate's dad's stuff, So Violet didn't feel like she could approach Kate.
Yeah, she felt guilty.
Right. Because she felt like she was the one who took away her father. So I understand why it took Violet so long to, get there. And at the same time, she also thought that Kate was safe.
Yeah.
Because she thought that she had gotten rid of.
Just thriving somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
But she immediately knows when she pulls up at the apartment building that something is terribly, terribly wrong.
Yeah. Yep.
It's honestly a very beautiful book. It did it was a little slow, in my opinion, at the beginning.
It was. It took me a little. I didn't really get into it until about halfway, to be honest.
Yeah, I think about same for me.
It was, and it wasn't because it was bad. It was just it wasn't holding my interest.
I kept wanting to know what happened, but not at a pace that I typically find when I read.
Exactly.
And so it did take me longer to read, but it was so good. And it's relatively short.
It's not a long read. It is pace-wise long, but physical length, no, it's not long.
Yeah, overall, just a really, really great book. A great debut, too.
Absolutely. It's one of those books where I feel lucky that I read it afterwards. Yeah. I'm wow, I'm so glad that not only this book exists, but I exist and therefore was able to read this book.
And I also feel like if you, you literally listen to us talk about the entire book, but I would say the cover does such a good job.
I love it.
Of describing the book.
I love the cover. It's so beautiful. Simple, but it's so once you read the book, it's so meaningful and I love it.
So Alex, what did you rate it?
I'm gonna rate it 5 stars, baby.
Woo!
Yeah.
She finished 30 minutes before we recorded.
Granted, I only had a few pages left, but yes, I did finish shortly before this episode.
I'm rating it a 4.5. I loved it.
Yeah,
so
amazing.
Good. Would you recommend?
Oh, for sure. 100%. I want everyone to read it.
Absolutely. I agree.
This is another Dear Sugar for me. I'm
and it's fiction, so it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun because it's both. I've seen it categorized 2 separate ways. So it's either historical fiction or magical realism.
Yep.
So, take your pick at this point.
Both are on point.
A book with similar vibes to this, in my opinion, is Ink, Blood, Sister, Scribe by Emma Torres, which you may have heard of because it was one of the books I featured in our January 2022 or 2024 episode of our 2023 favorites.
Yes.
It has the like same kind of like magical undertone
Mm-hmm.
and also just like this great context of the world that you're living in.
Yeah. And it is on my TBR.
Oh, good. So it wouldn't be an episode if I didn't say my Taylor Swift song for this book. And I went back and forth a while on this because I was like, well, each like woman could have their own. Like originally I was going to do Ivy because it's this like
I love Ivy.
it's so good and I thought it was perfect for Alpha.
Yeah.
Ugh. But then I was like, but then that's a lot and I'd get rid of like a bunch of songs to use in the future and also it would probably go on for too long. So what I did end up deciding on was Mad Woman on Folklore, which Folklore is probably my favorite album and Mad Woman is for sure one of my favorite songs. So, and the song is actually about it's like Taylor Swift's angry letter to Scooter Braun. So, it's anyway, here are some of the lyrics that reminded me of this book. What did you think I'd say to that? Does a scorpion sting when fighting back? They strike to kill, and you know I will. Every time you call me crazy, I get more crazy. What about that? And when you say I seem angry, I get more angry. And there's nothing like a mad woman. What a shame she went mad. No one likes a mad woman. You made her like that. And you'll poke that bear till her claws come out and you find something to wrap your noose around.
Very fitting.
And women like hunting witches too. Doing your dirtiest work for you. It's obvious that wanting me dead has really brought you two together.
I see it.
Yeah.
Very fitting.
I thought it described all of the women when they found their own path, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Perfect.
We hope you enjoyed our summary, our in-depth conversation of Weyward. Alex, do you want to tell them what next month's book will be?
Yes. Next month's book will be Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I need to go to bed.
All right. So we both need to go to bed.
It's time.
It is a school night for us. And by school night, I mean work night. I don't have school on a Friday, thank goodness. But wrapping it up, email us at goatpod@gmail.com with suggestions or book recommendations. And check out our social media at goatpod on Instagram or TikTok and on Facebook at All the Good Ones Are Taken. You can also find my bookstagram at peas_reads.
Woo! Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode and we'll see you next time.
This has been All the Good Ones
Are Taken.